47 surgical procedures, 47 human beings subjected to experimental organ transplantation, and not a single survivor. A leather-bound journal, unearthed in 1891, held these meticulously documented figures. It lay concealed behind a false wall in what was once the surgical theater of Belmont Plantation, nestled in Charleston County, South Carolina. The journal chronicled an occurrence that shattered the boundaries of medical comprehension of its era. In the years spanning 1847 to 1851, there were methodical efforts to transfer organs from animals into human beings. What makes this discovery particularly unsettling is not merely the experiments themselves, but the meticulous detail with which each failure was documented, the thorough notes on the duration of suffering, and the haunting reality that local authorities had been aware of these procedures and had actively aided in their concealment for more than 4 decades. Before we delve deeper into the tale of Dr. Silas Thornwell and the surgical wing that was condemned to flames by the state legislature in the year 1852, there's something I must ask of you. If you find yourself drawn to this kind of chilling historical enigma, consider subscribing to this channel and tapping the notification bell. I'm intrigued. So drop a comment and share which state or city you're tuning in from. Now, let's delve into the chilling events that transpired in that Plantation surgical theater and unravel the mystery of why 47 souls never walked out alive. The discovery of that journal would never have happened if not for the devastating Charleston fire of 1891, which engulfed a dozen city blocks and unearthed architectural secrets that families had paid dearly to keep hidden. But to grasp the terror captured in those pages, we must journey back 44 years to a South Carolina that thrived in the midst of deep contradictions. Charleston in 1847 was a city of striking contrasts. The cobblestone streets were home to some of the most renowned medical minds in the nation. Graduates from European universities who came back to set up practices that competed with those in Boston and Philadelphia. The Medical Society of South Carolina, established in the year 1789, had earned a reputation for groundbreaking surgical advancements that attracted students from all corners of the nation. Yet, this same city's economy relied completely on the bondage of human beings, forming a strange crossroads of scientific progress and deep moral shadow. Dr. Silas Thornwell stepped into Charleston's shadows in the early months of 1846, bearing credentials from the University of Edinburgh and letters of introduction from esteemed physicians in London. He was 34 years old, unmarried, and harbored a peculiar obsession that he skillfully concealed from the world. Contemporary accounts paint a picture of a man who blended into the background, neither striking nor repulsive. He stood at an average height, his brown hair showing the first signs of retreat, and his hands, though ordinary, were marked by an unsettling steadiness. What distinguished him was his fervor. A number of doctors in Charleston who encountered him in his early days in the city would later remember how his discussions inevitably returned to one haunting theme: the chilling idea of swapping out sick human organs for healthy replacements. The idea wasn't completely unfamiliar. In the 1,660 seconds, European surgeons ventured into the unsettling realm of blood transfusions, attempting to transfer life from animals to humans. However, these grim experiments ended in universally tragic outcomes, prompting a swift ban on the practice. Organ transplantation was nothing more than a wild dream, a notion that danced on the edge of possibility, a topic that stirs deep discussions among medical circles, yet lacks the weight of genuine scientific inquiry. The mystery of the human body's rejection of foreign tissue remained elusive. That knowledge lay many years ahead. What Thornwell proposed in those early Charleston conversations felt more like the fevered whispers of a dark tale than the rationality of science. But Thornwell possessed something that many experimental surgeons did not: a considerable fortune passed down from the textile industry, along with a readiness to employ that wealth in manners that would have shocked his Presbyterian minister father back in Connecticut. Within 6 months of his arrival, he had purchased Belmont Plantation, a struggling rice operation 15 miles northwest of Charleston. The plantation arrived with 42 enslaved individuals, a main house in a state of decay, and several outbuildings, including a former overseer's cottage that Thornwell would turn into something never seen before. The oppressed community at Belmont had already faced immense suffering under the former owner, a reckless gambler named Harrison Calhoun, who had ultimately drunk himself to death, leaving the estate burdened with debts far exceeding its worth. Thornwell's arrival at first appeared to promise a glimmer of hope. He declared that he had no desire to continue with rice cultivation and intended to transform the plantation into what he referred to as a private medical facility. The field work would be minimal, he conveyed through his newly appointed overseer, a burly man by the name of Virgil Radburn. Instead, the captives would tend to the land, care for the structures, and assist with his medical experiments. He did not specify what that research would involve. Thornwell dedicated the final months of 1846 to the painstaking renovation of the overseer's cottage. He had the structure laid bare, its very bones exposed, and then he meticulously reconstructed it, following the blueprints he had crafted with his own hands. Big windows were put in on the north side to let in the best light. The interior was split into 3 distinct rooms. A surgical theater stood in the middle, flanked by a recovery room on one side, and on the other, what the construction workers observed with growing discomfort, a row of large animal pens, their floors etched with drainage channels. Local craftsmen who toiled on the project later recounted unsettling details. The surgical theater was equipped with iron restraint points, firmly embedded in the ceiling beams and the floor, casting a chilling shadow over the sterile environment. A massive table, hewn from white oak, was bound with leather straps at 6 ominous points. The recovery room held a total of 8 narrow beds, each one fitted with restraints. When a carpenter inquired about the necessity of numerous restraints in a medical facility, Thornwell responded that he would be caring for patients who could thrash about in fever dreams, potentially harming themselves. The answer was embraced, for the thought of the real purpose was far too terrifying for good-hearted individuals to entertain. The animal pens left the workers even more bewildered. What could possibly drive a medical facility to require such robust enclosures? Thornwell revealed that he would delve into the intricate world of animal anatomy, seeking to unravel the mysteries of human disease lurking in the shadows. He commanded the creation of a sheltered passage linking the animal enclosures to the surgical theater, complete with doors at both ends that could be secured from the outside. The layout permitted the livestock to be ushered straight into the surgical area, hidden from the view of the main grounds. By the month of January in the year 1847, the construction had reached its final stages. Thornwell started gathering creatures, not merely chickens or pigs for ordinary examination, but rare and costly specimens. He bought a pair of young hogs at high prices, choosing them for their robust size and good health. He acquired 3 sheep from a breeder in Virginia who specialized in large rams. He paid an astonishing amount for a young chimpanzee, recently brought to Charleston by a merchant sailor. The creature's destiny would turn out to be especially important, but not in the ways anyone expected. Thornwell's actions could have drawn more attention, but he skillfully nurtured his connections. He gave a substantial contribution to the Medical Society of South Carolina. He went to church services, but those who sat close by observed that he never sang the hymns, he merely moved his lips in silence. He gathered local physicians for intimate dinners, where he passionately shared his thoughts on the pursuit of medical knowledge, all for the greater good of humanity. He never spoke of the particular research he was undertaking, and the genteel circles of Charleston refrained from probing for specifics. Yet, the enslaved community at Belmont possessed a far more vivid understanding of the unfolding events. They observed the building process with an increasing sense of unease. They listened to the creatures in their enclosures, the eerie sounds echoing through the darkness of the night. They observed that Thornwell dined in solitude, frequently laboring through the night, the glow of his lamp illuminating the surgical theater until the break of day. And they noticed something else. Thornwell had begun making notations in a journal he carried everywhere, observing them with an attention that felt less medical and more like a butcher examining livestock. A single soul perceived the lurking peril with a clarity that eluded the rest. Her name was Dinina, and she was 42 years old that winter. She was born on the plantation, a legacy of healing woven into her very being. With the wisdom of her mother and grandmother coursing through her veins, she tended to the ailments of her community, wielding herbs like a sorceress in the shadows. Dinina had endured 25 years under Harrison Calhoun's ruthless control, by mastering the art of invisibility when needed and proving herself essential when summoned. She grasped the essence of white people through sheer necessity, deciphering their moods, their intentions, and the faint signals that hinted at impending violence. The words she encountered in Silas Thornwell filled her with dread. "That man has death in his eyes," she whispered to her daughter Clara one chilly evening in February, her voice barely above a murmur as they worked together to prepare cornmeal in the dim light of the cooking house. "I have witnessed men who find joy in the suffering of others," is less than text. "I have witnessed men who take lives without a second thought, but this one is different." He looked at us as if we were already dead, just biding our time for him to inscribe it in that book of his. Clara, 20 years old and expecting her first child, gripped her mother's hand tightly. "We have to keep our distance from him, Mama. Complete our tasks. Stay low and out of sight." "Unable to escape the grasp of a man who possesses you?" Dina responded, her gaze far away. "And he was plotting something sinister, constructing that eerie place with all those straps and chains, ushering in all those creatures. A doctor shouldn't have animal pens right next to the place where he treats people." Even if she left the thought hanging, Clara grasped the dark undertone. Nina's fears would prove tragically present. On the 18th day of February, in the year 1847, Thornwell called upon Virgil Raburn to enter his study, where he presented a list of particular demands. He had to pinpoint those who were trapped in bondage, fitting specific criteria: relatively young, seemingly in good health, yet unmistakably exhibiting signs of certain ailments or vulnerabilities that Thornwell had been meticulously recording. The list had a chilling specificity that sent a shiver down Rayburn's spine. Yet, as a man whose livelihood depended on managing human property, he had long since silenced his conscience. The first name on the list was a man named Augustus, who was 31 years old and had developed a persistent cough that winter. Thornwell's notes hinted at a lurking lung disease, yet Augustus continued to toil through full days, displaying no ominous signs of grave illness. The second was a woman named Pearl, who was 26 years old, and Thornwell had noticed her grappling with what he identified as a frail heart. At times, she felt her heart racing and struggled to catch her breath when she pushed herself too hard. Thornwell instructed that they should be moved to the recovery room in the medical building. "Inform them that they are receiving care for their afflictions. Complimentary care, better than anything they could find anywhere else. Transform it into a tale of serendipity." Rayburn squirmed in his seat, a sense of unease creeping over him. And if they chose to stay, Thornwell's face remained impassive. "Mr. Rayburn, I trust you understand the dynamics of power on a plantation without further elaboration. They will leave, for I have made the choice for them. The decision is not in their hands." The exchange marked a pivotal instant, one that would be etched in memory and recounted years later in the testimony Rayburn gave to the investigators. He insisted he had no idea what Thornwell was scheming. He was adamant that the doctor truly aimed to help the ailing slaves, maybe even testing out new remedies, but nothing more sinister. Whether this was a chilling truth or a clever deception to escape the grasp of justice, we may never uncover with absolute certainty. What we know is that Rayburn obeyed his orders, and on the 20th day of February, in the year 1847, Augustus and Pearl were led to the medical building. They never came back to the quarters. The initial experiment commenced on the night of February 20th, 1847, after Thornwell had devoted the day to preparations that were so detailed they felt almost like a sacred rite. He had pored over his anatomical texts, honed his surgical instruments to a deadly gleam, and meticulously crafted notes detailing his chilling theoretical approach. His journal from that day, which would later be presented as evidence during the legislative inquiry, uncovers the meticulousness of his planning and the chilling lack of any moral doubt. A man, around 31 years old, displayed a gradual deterioration in his breathing. He penned his thoughts in a tidy, unwavering script. The idea that swapping out damaged lung tissue with healthy tissue from animals could bring back the ability to breathe normally is a chilling thought, one that stirs both hope and fear in the depths of the mind. A chosen young pig, around 6 months old, showing remarkable health and vitality. The decision to move forward with the transplantation of the right lung is made, as it poses a lower risk of immediate cardiac complications. The sterile words masked a deed of unspeakable horror. Augustus had been warned that he would undergo a procedure for his persistent cough. He had been handed what Thornwell referred to as medicine, but in reality, it was merely a gentle sedative blended with whiskey. As Augustus succumbed to drowsiness and a strange sense of compliance, he was transported to the surgical theater, where he was bound to the cold, unyielding table. The restraints were described as essential to ensure he remained motionless throughout the treatment. When Augustus finally started to grasp the reality of the situation, it had already slipped beyond his reach. What transpired in that surgical theater over the course of 3 hours shattered every tenet of medical ethics that had ever been established, even in that morally ambiguous time. Thornwell embarked on a procedure that would remain unachievable for another century, and he did so without the comfort of anesthesia. The ether would remain hidden from public view until the month of October in that very year, a time when the concepts of infection control, blood typing, and tissue rejection were still shrouded in mystery. The journal entry that came after the surgery was short and unsettling. Subject 1 passed away at 11:47 in the evening, roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes after the procedure. The sudden onset of breathing failure, coupled with intense bleeding, led to a dire situation. Reflections for upcoming endeavors. Seeking a quicker surgical method to reduce blood loss. The integration of animal tissue was not witnessed, as it swiftly deteriorated. The end result? A haunting defeat. Yet the approach reveals potential as it undergoes further refinement. Augustus's body lay hidden in a nameless grave at the edge of the plantation, shrouded in the darkness before dawn. Rayburn oversaw the burial, informing the enslaved community that Augustus had succumbed to his lung disease, despite the doctor's valiant attempts to save him. The tale was embraced, not due to anyone's faith in its truth, but because the other option was far too horrifying to face. Those who were enslaved had come to understand that enduring often meant swallowing blatant falsehoods without a word of dissent. Dina understood the risks all too well. That night, she caught whispers drifting from the medical building. No screams, but something far more unsettling. Soft, muted sounds hinted at a desperate struggle, a person trapped and unable to voice their torment completely. She had witnessed Thornwell step out the following morning, his attire altered, yet traces of blood still marked his boots. And she had observed that the young pig Thornwell had obtained a fortnight prior was missing, its pen vacant and scrubbed clean. They killed Augustus, she confided to a select few that night, her voice trembling and barely audible. Whatever that man is doing in that building, it sure isn't healing. It's something beyond comprehension, something wicked. But what were they to do? Engaging with those in power often led to inevitable consequences, whether it be severe punishment or even death. Fleeing felt like tearing away from loved ones, with the constant dread of being hunted down and dragged back into the darkness. The trap was flawless and complete. They could only stand by, hearts pounding, hoping and praying that they wouldn't be the next ones to face the darkness. Thornwell waited 3 days before selecting his second subject. Pearl, the woman with the fragile heart, was brought to the medical building on the 23rd of February. Since Augustus's death, she had been under constant watch, with Thornwell checking her pulse several times each day and meticulously documenting her symptoms. His journal unveils a chilling truth. He realized that his initial failures stemmed in part from trying to navigate a procedure far too intricate for his grasp. For his second attempt, he selected what he thought would be an easier path. The entry reads, Subject 2 female, around 26 years old, showing signs of irregular heartbeat and diminished endurance. The idea that animal heart tissue, when properly integrated, could bolster weakened cardiac function is intriguing. The chosen method involves the partial transplantation of lamb heart tissue, aiming to supplement the existing organ rather than completely replace it. Donor female lamb, aged 8 months. Superb heart health. The procedure unfolded under the eerie shadows of the night on the 23rd of February. Pearl survived 6 hours after the surgery. The reason for death was recorded as sudden heart failure accompanied by significant bleeding. Her body lay alongside Augustus in the forgotten graves. A chilling rhythm had taken hold. Every 3 to 4 days, Thornwell chose another victim. His standards shifted with every misstep he encountered. He started selecting younger individuals, believing that their age would provide a greater chance for recovery. He changed his methods, trying kidney transplants, liver tissue grafts, and even a procedure with sheep lung tissue that he thought might work better than pig lung. The approach was a chilling blend of sedation through trickery, binding the victim, performing surgery without sufficient pain relief, careful recording of the unavoidable demise, and a hasty burial before the first light of dawn. The journal chronicled every death with an unsettling coldness, as if emotions were stripped away, leaving only the stark reality behind each loss. Subject 3, Subject 4, Subject 5. Names seldom found their way into conversation. Thornwell referred to the enslaved people as numbered subjects, as if they were mere specimens in a dark experiment rather than living, breathing human beings. As March approached, the enslaved community at Belmont found themselves engulfed in a suffocating dread. 4 souls had been ushered into the medical building. Not a single one had come back. The official justifications: passed away due to their pre-existing conditions, succumbed to complications during treatment, and left no one convinced. Individuals started to shy away from reporting their ailments, haunted by the dread that any hint of vulnerability would mark them as prey. Parents guided their children to present an image of health, regardless of their true feelings. On the 12th day of March, in the year 1847, Danina found herself as the 8th subject of Thornwell. He had watched her as she tended to others with herbal remedies, and he labeled her condition as a chronic digestive disorder. She sometimes felt a dull ache in her stomach, a familiar discomfort that she had never thought much of. On the eerie evening of the 12th of March, Rayburn appeared at her door, delivering the unsettling news that Dr. Thornwell desired to address her affliction. She understood the implications. With a gentle embrace, she held her daughter Clara close, murmuring secrets of hidden herbs and healing wisdom before she made her way to the medical building, surrendering without a fight. Struggling would only lead to being pulled down further, and she chose to hold on to the last shreds of dignity that were left to her. Danina endured a harrowing 11 hours after Thornwell's chilling attempt to graft pig stomach tissue into her abdomen. Her final utterance, captured by Thornwell in his journal, comes across more as exasperation than regret. "God see you." She breathed her last, just after the first light of dawn, on the 13th day of March, the 9th soul claimed by Thornwell in his relentless pursuit of medical progress. Her demise signified a pivotal moment. Clara, consumed by sorrow and carrying a life within her, took a perilous step into the unknown. She walked towards a white minister who had sometimes come to the plantation to hold services, a man known as Reverend Thomas Olston, who was seen as somewhat compassionate towards the spiritual needs of the enslaved people. She whispered to him that souls were perishing at Belmont, not due to illness, but because of something sinister happening within the medical building. Ole's response would later be captured in the letters he penned to his colleagues, letters that ultimately contributed to the unfolding investigation. He absorbed Clara's tale with an increasing sense of dread, yet he hesitated to take action. Instead, he followed the path that countless so-called virtuous men took during that dark time. He told himself that there had to be a logical reason lurking in the shadows, a skilled doctor conducting experiments in a desperate attempt to aid the ailing slaves. Surely that couldn't be as chilling as this tormented girl implied. He assured Clara he would investigate the issue, yet in the shadows, he took no action at all. Paralyzed by the fear of false accusations that could lead to humiliation, this hesitation ultimately claimed lives. Thornwell pressed on with his experiments, delving deeper through the chilling days of March and into the eerie nights of April. His technique grew sharper. He toiled with increasing speed, shedding less blood in the midst of his operations, honing his technique with precision. Yet the core issue lingered, an insurmountable shadow haunting his every effort. With 1847 medical knowledge, the human body rejected foreign tissue. Each individual met their end, the majority within mere hours, while a handful lingered for up to 2 days before falling victim to infection, blood loss, or the failure of vital organs. By the end of April, in the year 1847, Thornwell had taken the lives of 19 individuals. The plantation's enslaved population had dwindled from 42 to 23, a loss far too profound to conceal entirely. Whispers started to spread through Charleston. What could have caused Belmont to face such a chilling rise in death? The plantation was no stranger to death, disease, injury, and the perils of childbirth. Yet the toll of 19 lives lost in just 2 months was truly remarkable, even for the harsh realities of that cruel establishment. The inquiries made their way to the local medical society, where Thornwell's peers started to wonder what precisely he was investigating at his secluded facility. He sidestepped the conversation with hazy allusions to untested therapies for lung and heart ailments, shifting to the challenges of caring for gravely ill individuals, and the grim truth that, despite the most dedicated attempts, medicine could falter. His standing as a skilled doctor from Edinburgh held significant influence, and his substantial contributions to the Medical Society's library fund led his peers to embrace his justifications, without delving too far into the details. Yet, not all were content. Dr. Edmund Whitlock, a physician from Charleston known for his work with the enslaved, found himself increasingly uneasy about Thornwell's true nature after their limited encounters. He started to probe with sharp, deliberate questions. What particular treatments was Thornwell trying to pursue? What caused the death toll to be so staggering? Was it possible for him to visit Belmont and take a look at the medical facility? Thornwell turned down the visit, clinging tightly to the secrets of patient confidentiality and the delicate threads of medical research he wasn't prepared to unveil. Whitlock felt a deep unease at the refusal, yet it held no legal power to stop Thornwell from moving forward. In South Carolina, the law offered no shield for enslaved individuals from the horrors of medical experimentation. They were seen as mere possessions, and those who owned them felt free to treat them however they pleased. This unsettling truth meant that even doctors who sensed something amiss had no way to step in. Meanwhile, the last few souls at Belmont were gripped by an unending terror. They observed Thornwell as he moved through the shadows, his journal clutched tightly, his gaze fixed on them with a chilling indifference that had grown all too familiar and deeply unsettling. They understood that even the slightest hint of sickness, a mere whisper of discomfort, or any trace of frailty, could lead to their fate being sealed. Some intentionally harmed themselves in manners that would render them unfit for surgery. Shattered fingers, slashed arms, a chilling logic that a broken being would hold less worth than a whole one. Some whispered their prayers into the darkness, yearning for divine intervention in a world where humanity had turned its back. Clara welcomed her daughter into the world on the 3rd day of May in the year 1847, surrounded by the supportive hands of other women in the quarters. Filled with dread that if she reached out to Thornwell, he might exploit the dangers of childbirth as a pretext for his sinister experiments. She named the baby Danina, honoring the grandmother who had perished in a desperate attempt to shield others from harm. The arrival of new life ignited a fierce will to endure, yet it cast a darker shadow over her heart, amplifying her sorrow. She was bringing a child into a realm where death lurked with intent, cloaked in the guise of a doctor. Thornwell's journal from the beginning of May unveils a disturbing shift in his mindset. After 19 failures, he started to ponder that the issue wasn't his surgical technique, which had certainly seen remarkable improvements, but rather what he referred to as the quality of the subjects. He wrote, "Thinking about recent failures reveals that people weakened by a bad diet, insufficient housing, and hard work might not have the strength needed to endure transplantation. In the shadows of future experiments, it is essential to select subjects who are in their prime, free from any past health issues, to ensure that the lurking variables of pre-existing frailties do not haunt the results." This marked a terrifying change. In the past, Thornwell had defended his experiments by asserting that he was helping those who were unwell. Now, he was scheming to perform surgeries on those who were perfectly healthy, stripping away that already fragile justification. He started watching the most vibrant souls at Belmont with a fresh sense of curiosity. On the 14th of May, in the year 1847, he chose a young man named Benjamin, who was 23 years of age, had never reported any illness, and toiled as a carpenter, tending to the maintenance of plantation buildings. Benjamin was robust, vigilant, and exhibited no signs of illness at all. His sole misfortune lay in the fact that he possessed the perfect health that Thornwell now sought to experiment with. The surgery took place on the 15th of May. Thornwell embarked on a chilling experiment, attempting a kidney transplant with tissue harvested from a young ram. He speculated that the intricacies of kidney function could be less daunting than those of the heart or lungs, but the shadows of uncertainty loomed large over his audacious endeavor. Benjamin endured 4 days, a span longer than most subjects, before succumbing to what the journal noted as acute renal failure and a systemic infection. He was the 20th victim. During that fateful week, 3 chilling events unfolded, each one a thread in the dark tapestry that would ultimately unravel Thornwell's sinister operation. Yet none would unfold swiftly enough to spare countless lives from the impending doom. Initially, Dr. A. Whitlock reached out to the Medical Society of South Carolina, seeking an inquiry into the death rate at Belmont. His letter was crafted with precision, skirting around direct accusations, yet it cast a shadow of doubt over Thornwell's intentions, hinting at the possibility that he might be delving into dangerously aggressive experimental treatments without the necessary medical justification. Second, an enslaved man named Isaac, 35 years old, escaped from Belmont. He had witnessed 20 people perish and concluded that fleeing, despite the immense dangers, was better than remaining for selection. He made it as far as Georgetown, 40 miles north, before being captured. When questioned about his flight, he revealed to his captors that the physician at Belmont is taking lives. This account was noted, yet mostly overlooked. Those who were enslaved often found their accusations against white property owners dismissed, and Isaac's assertion seemed almost unbelievable. In the shadows of Charleston, a medical supply merchant began to feel an unsettling suspicion about Thornwell's orders, a feeling that gnawed at the edges of his mind. The merchant, a man named Robert Finch, had been peddling Thornwell's surgical instruments, laudanum, sutures, and various other supplies for several months now. The amounts were strange, far exceeding what one doctor caring for a few patients would typically require. Furthermore, Thornwell had recently asked for a collection of specialized instruments, including large bore needles, vascular clamps, and cutting tools that seemed more suited for veterinary practices or butchery than for the care of human patients. Finch shared his worries, with Dr. Whitlock encountered someone unexpectedly at a gathering of medical professionals. Whitlock revealed his unsettling doubts, and the two men resolved to confront the society's leaders with their troubling apprehensions. Yet, they encountered a daunting challenge. Thornwell had given a significant amount of money, granting him considerable sway over the society's governing board. Many board members hesitated to probe into the actions of a fellow physician, viewing the evidence as mere conjecture and hearsay. The endless bureaucratic delays would ultimately seal their fate. During the months of May and June in the year 1847, Thornwell pressed on with his experiments, each day more fervently than the last. His journal reveals a growing fixation and a waning sense of caution. He had stopped choosing subjects mainly based on their health issues. At this stage, almost all the residents of Belmont were in good health, having survived the ordeal, as those who were unwell had met their grim fate. Instead, he started selecting subjects based on what he referred to as anatomical optimization. He took the measure of souls. He documented their weights, heights, lung capacities, and pulse rates. He compared these measurements to the creatures he had gathered and chose human subjects whose physical dimensions most closely resembled those of the donor animals, theorizing that matching sizes might enhance the chances of a successful transplant. The journal uncovers a psyche that has utterly forsaken the acknowledgement of these individuals as human, stripped of rights, emotions, or any semblance of dignity. They had transformed into elements in a puzzle he was resolute to unravel. Subject 23 was a teenage boy named Samuel, 16 years old, chosen because his chest measurements closely matched those of a young pig Thornwell had acquired specifically for this experiment. The surgery carried out on the 28th of May sought to perform a double lung transplant. Samuel survived 14 hours. His passing was marked by an unsettling sense of frustration. Subject 23 exhibited more robust vital signs compared to earlier subjects, indicating a refinement in both technique and subject selection. However, the premature failure is disheartening. One potential reason could be insufficient vascular connections. Future efforts should concentrate on achieving more accurate arterial grafting. The last souls at Belmont, now less than 20, had transcended fear, sinking into a chilling numbness that gripped their hearts. They moved like automatons, exchanging few words, and averted their eyes from Thornwell's piercing stare at every opportunity. Parents clutched their children tightly as darkness fell, acutely aware that innocence provided no shield against the lurking terrors. The elders did their best to provide comfort, yet the usual sources of solace, faith in eventual freedom, and hope for better days had been eroded by the unyielding, methodical slaughter that surrounded them. Clara Ara, now nurturing her tiny daughter, discovered her fate on the 8th day of June. Thornwell observed that she had bounced back swiftly from childbirth, radiating an aura of remarkable health. His entry reads, Subject 27, female, approximately 21 years old, recently postpartum. Remarkable heart health noted during the journey of recovery after childbirth. The subject exhibits remarkable physical endurance, positioning her as the perfect candidate for the cardiac transplantation experiment. The youth of the hypothesis and the recent success of childbirth suggest a robust constitutional health that could facilitate the incorporation of animal cardiac tissue. Clara was torn away from her nursing infant and taken to the medical building. In stark contrast to those before her, she let out a piercing scream and struggled fiercely. She pleaded for just one more chance to nourish her child. Thornwell's response, etched in his journal, sent a shiver down the spine. Subject 27 exhibited profound distress and strong resistance, necessitating extra restraints and a double dose of sedative. The turmoil of emotions could very well jeopardize the outcomes of the experiments. When choosing subjects for the future, it's essential to take temperament into account as a variable. The surgery unfolded on the eerie evening of the 8th day of June. Thornwell made a desperate attempt to attach sheep heart tissue to Clara's own heart, a procedure he had already attempted on 2 previous occasions, both ending in tragic failure. Clara endured a grueling span of 18 hours, ultimately succumbing in the early light of June 9th. Her infant, abandoned without a mother or anyone to provide nourishment, was entrusted to another woman for care, but the infant struggled without her mother and died 3 days later. The tragic loss of both mother and child shattered the already fragile spirit of the enslaved community, pushing them to their breaking point. A band of 4 men, fully aware that death loomed over them regardless of their choices, resolved to make their way to Charleston to inform the authorities of the unfolding horror. They realized this was likely a path to their own demise. Escaping from a plantation was punishable by death. Accusing a white property owner felt like a death sentence, but witnessing the slow and deliberate destruction of their community had become too much to bear. The 4 men, James, Henry, William, and Peter, departed from Belmont on the eerie night of June 14th. They made it about 8 miles before being spotted by a patrol. 3 were taken captive right away. Peter, the youngest of them all, somehow evaded his captors and sprinted towards Charleston. He arrived at the lawyer's office, breathless and filled with dread, seeking refuge with Marcus Whitfield, a man known for sometimes taking on cases of those enslaved. Peter's account, shared in breathless, trembling pieces, ultimately revealed the crucial evidence that would shatter the case wide open. He recounted the chilling sight of 28 individuals being led to the medical building, never to return. He recounted the eerie noises emanating from that building under the cover of darkness. Not quite screaming, as Thornwell's sedatives held that at bay, but there were groans and the desperate sounds of a struggle against the restraints. He recounted the sight of Thornwell's bloodied garments, the grim details of the burial, and the suffocating atmosphere of dread. Whitfield, to his credit, regarded the accusation with a weighty seriousness. Whispers of strange deaths at Belmont had reached his ears from various sources. Now, Isaac's earlier claims haunt the shadows, as Dr. Whitlock's concerns linger and questions swirl ominously in legal circles. He chose to present Peter's testimony straight to the Charleston County Sheriff, a man known as Daniel Patterson, who held the power to probe into even the most notable citizens if there were whispers of wrongdoing. Patterson's first instinct was to doubt. The allegation was almost unbelievable. A trusted doctor methodically taking the lives of those in bondage for the sake of twisted medical trials. It felt like something ripped from the pages of a thrilling tale, rather than the truth of existence. Yet Whitfield persisted, highlighting the various independent sources that were voicing their worries about Belmont. Patterson reluctantly accepted the invitation to the plantation, yet he emphasized that his purpose was to look into reports of unnaturally high death rates, not to entertain notions of intentional murder, a concept he struggled to accept as reality. The visit was scheduled for the 20th of June, 1847. Patterson reached out to Thornwell, letting him know he would be carrying out a standard inspection of the medical facilities on the property, a notice that was mandated by law. This early warning would almost spell doom for the inquiry. Thornwell got the word from Patterson on the 16th day of June. His reply unveils a blend of cleverness and urgency. He realized that traces of his actions lingered in every corner of the medical building. Surgical tools stained with crimson remnants, the binding devices, the animal enclosures complete with their waste channels, and most chillingly, his diary filled with precise accounts of 29 killings masquerading as medical trials. He spent the 17th to the 19th of June attempting to sanitize the facility. He meticulously cleaned the surgical instruments, his obsession evident in every stroke. He took away the most apparent bindings from the surgical theater, yet the marks where they had been anchored still lingered in the walls and floors. He moved a handful of animals to a barn on the distant edge of the plantation property, and he concealed his journal behind a deceptive panel he had crafted in the wall of the surgical theater, a hidden panel lurking behind a cabinet filled with medical tomes. Yet, he was unable to conceal it all. The graves were there, 29 bodies laid to rest in a queue at the edge of the property. The room, now recovered, still whispered of its dark past, with the narrow beds and their ominous restraints lingering in the shadows. The surgical theater, even after a thorough cleaning, bore the haunting remnants of blood etched into the wood grain of the floor and table. Most chillingly, there were 16 surviving enslaved individuals, forever marked as living witnesses to the horrors they had endured. Thornwell's scheme was to portray himself as a devoted doctor who had earnestly tried to heal gravely ill patients using untested treatments, all of which, tragically, ended in failure. The tragic loss of lives was heart-wrenching, yet it did not cross the line into criminality. He would highlight his qualifications, his desire to push the boundaries of medical knowledge, and the grim truth that those enslaved were considered his possessions, to be handled as he deemed appropriate. He held a belief, not without reason, that the legal system would back a white physician's claim to experiment on those he considered his property. What he didn't foresee was Sheriff Patterson's meticulous nature. Patterson made his entrance on the 20th day of June, not alone but flanked by deputies and accompanied by Dr. Whitlock, whom he had summoned to lend his medical expertise in assessing the facility. Whitlock had been urging for an investigation for weeks, his resolve dark and unyielding as he sought to unearth the truth lurking in the shadows. The eerie inspection commenced within the dimly lit medical building. Patterson surveyed the surgical theater, his gaze lingering on the stark points, curiosity gnawing at him as he pondered their purpose. Thornwell revealed that they were intended to restrain patients in a state of delirium who could potentially harm themselves. Patterson observed the drainage channels and the unsettling closeness to the area where animals had unmistakably been confined. What was the link between the place where animals were kept and the anatomical study conducted in the surgical theater? Thornwell responded with an unsettling calmness. Grasping the intricacies of animal physiology sheds light on how to address comparable ailments in humans. Dr. Whitlock scrutinized the surgical instruments, his unease growing as he discovered several that sent a chill down his spine. Giant blades, ominous clamps, and needles that seemed to defy reason. Dr. Thornwell, these instruments feel more appropriate for animals than for treating people. Could you shed some light on what they aim to achieve? Thornwell replied that sometimes specialized tools are necessary for advanced surgical techniques. I've been exploring methods that venture into the realm of the unconventional. What specific procedures are we talking about? Patterson inquired. Thornwell paused, grappling with his thoughts, before finally revealing a fragment of the truth. Experimental organ treatments have been undertaken in a desperate bid to confront the afflictions plaguing the heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys, through direct surgical intervention, yet the outcomes have proven to be disheartening and unsuccessful to this point. The practice of medicine is a journey through uncertainty, where each step is a dance between hope and the unknown. Sheriff, there are times when, despite all we do, patients slip away from us. Patterson stepped into the dimly lit recovery room, a sense of unease creeping over him. 8 narrow beds, each equipped with restraints. What's the reason behind every bed having those straps? Doctor, post-surgical patients frequently find themselves haunted by fever and delirium. The bindings hold them back, keeping them from clawing at their stitches or causing harm to themselves as they heal. It was a believable story. Every word Thornwell uttered was meticulously crafted to appear sensible, as long as one didn't scrutinize too deeply. Patterson and Whitlock shared uneasy looks, an unshakable sense of dread settling over them, though they couldn't quite pinpoint the source of the impending darkness lurking just out of sight. Then, Patterson requested a conversation with the individuals who were bound to labor at the plantation. Thornwell's body tightened, a clear sign of his inner turmoil, yet he found himself unable to decline without betraying a sense of guilt. He tried to take charge of the unsettling atmosphere by proposing they consult Rayburn, the overseer, who might shed light on the eerie claims swirling around them. Patterson consented to meet with Rayburn, yet firmly demanded to conduct private interviews with others as well. The interviews unfolded in the kitchen of the main house, a space shrouded in shadows, far from Thornwell's watchful gaze. Patterson spoke with 5 individuals, among them 3 who had seen others being led to the medical building. Their stories, shared with the wary hesitance of those aware that a single misstep could lead to doom, nevertheless wove a coherent and unsettling narrative. A woman named Ruth, 38 years old, recounted the chilling sights of people entering that building. They never emerge. At night, we listen closely to the whispers in the dark. Then we lay someone to rest the following morning. It has been that way since the 3rd month. Nearly 30 lives have been lost now. "What sort of things do you hear?" Patterson inquired. Ruth paused, her eyes darting to the door, a shiver running down her spine as if Thornwell's ears were pressed against it, waiting for her next move. It echoes like a soul in torment, unable to unleash its cries. Muffled sounds faded into silence. The following day, the doctor informed us that someone had succumbed to their illness. But she fell silent. But what is lurking in the shadows? But some of them weren't sick when they entered. Some were as healthy as could be. Accounts like those shared by the others Patterson spoke with emerged. Each one steeped in an unsettling atmosphere. Well, individuals being led to the medical facility. Unusual noises echoed in the night, lifeless forms hidden away before the first light, a chilling aura of dread enveloping Belmont, as if it were a thick mist. Patterson observed that each of them spoke of Thornwell's journal. He seemed to write in it endlessly, watching people closely and jotting down notes before choosing them. Where could this journal be hiding? Patterson inquired of Thornwell about the time they would continue the official inspection. "I keep track of the medical records for every patient and research subject," Thornwell responded. "The records in question are shrouded in confidentiality and embody valuable medical research that is proprietary in nature. I'm uneasy about revealing them unless I'm legally required to do so. I'm a county sheriff looking into some unsettling happenings," Patterson said, his voice taking on a steely edge. "That represents a binding obligation. Bring forth the journal." Dr. Thornwell's face turned ashen. He put on a performance of inspecting his study, his living quarters, the medical building, anywhere but the dark, suffocating space behind the wall panel. After an hour of searching, he insisted that the journal must have been misplaced, maybe even taken by one of the enslaved individuals who harbored resentment towards his authority. The assertion was clear as day. Whitlock confronted him head-on. "Dr. Thornwell, I've known you for 1 year. I've never encountered you without that journal in hand. It follows you like a shadow, lurking in every corner. On the very day a sheriff arrives to probe the credibility of that strain, you've lost it." The inspection concluded with Patterson announcing his intent to carry out a deeper investigation, which would involve scrutinizing the burial sites and formally interviewing every survivor. He instructed the deputies at Belmont to ensure that no one, including Thornwell, could leave the property or tamper with any possible evidence. On that fateful night in the main house, Thornwell found himself seated in solitude, a glass of whiskey cradled in his hand as he pondered the grim reality of his circumstances. He had taken the lives of 29 individuals in his relentless quest for what he still deemed valid scientific exploration. He kept meticulous records of each demise concealed behind a wall. He had 16 living witnesses to the terror he had unleashed, and a sheriff who clearly suspected the truth. His options were limited and grim. He could obliterate the journal, yet that wouldn't erase the tangible proof or the accounts. He could run, but where would he go? A fugitive from justice, stripped of his ability to practice medicine. He could attempt to brazen it out, banking on the legal system's defense of white property rights and the medical community's hesitance to denounce one of their own. Or he could choose the path that deep down he had always known he would take, to ensure that the full truth of his work was preserved for the sake of future medical understanding. Consequences be damned, because despite he unearthed the journal from its secret spot and settled down under the flickering lamplight, poring over his own words, recalling every topic, every method, every misstep. On the morrow, he resolved to lay before Sheriff Patterson the complete dossier, allow them to pass their judgments upon him. Let the passage of time be the judge of his actions. He refused to obliterate the evidence of his labor. The choice made would unleash repercussions that neither Thornwell nor Patterson could ever foresee. Sheriff Patterson made his way back to Belmont on the 21st of June, accompanied by a magistrate, 2 extra deputies, and a representative from the state medical board. The arrival of the latter signaled that the situation had spiraled beyond the confines of a mere local inquiry. The medical community was compelled to unravel the chilling events that had transpired and consider the possibility of holding one of their own accountable. Thornwell encountered them on the porch of the main house. He seemed calm, almost challenging. With no warning, he thrust the journal into Patterson's hands. "Do you really want to know what I've been up to? Take a moment to read this. Each and every procedure is carefully recorded. Each theory, each finding, each inference. This signifies groundbreaking medical research that sought to address issues that claim the lives of countless individuals. Patterson opened the journal and began to read. His face transformed from doubt to disbelief, then to a simmering fury as he flipped through the pages. The sterile terminology failed to hide the chilling reality of what was unfolding. A methodical series of human trials leading to intentional demise. Subject 1 to Subject 29. Every account reveals a soul's choice, the grim procedure they endured, and the haunting certainty of their demise. These are people, Dr. the Thornwell, Patterson said quietly, his voice strained with fury. You're portraying individuals as though they were mere subjects in a lab experiment. They were part of a chilling experiment, a dark chapter in the pursuit of surgical knowledge, Thornwell replied. Across Europe, doctors often engage in experimental procedures. The sole distinction in this scenario is that I was able to engage with individuals whose absence wouldn't disrupt the fabric of society. These individuals were bound by chains of servitude. Sheriff's property. According to the laws of South Carolina, I possessed the full right to utilize my property in the quest for scientific progress. The argument was chillingly valid within the warped reasoning of 1847 slavery law, which dehumanized enslaved individuals, reducing them to mere property instead of recognizing their humanity. Thornwell thought this would keep him safe. He was on the brink of discovering a different truth. The magistrate, a man named Charles Henderson, who had 2 decades of legal experience, examined the journal carefully. He read through multiple entries completely, his expression darkening with each word. At last, his gaze met Thornwell's. Doctor, your legal analysis has some significant flaws that cannot be overlooked. Initially, although the laws of South Carolina categorize enslaved individuals as property, they also contain clauses that protect against the neglect and destruction of valuable assets. You've taken the lives of 29 individuals, each one valued significantly in the world of commerce. The way in which one meets their end is significant. Even property law acknowledges that certain actions are so extreme, so brutal that they amount to criminal behavior, no matter the legal standing of the victim. 3. And most importantly, you recorded proof of medical malpractice so shocking that it endangers the reputation of the whole medical field. Thornwell's composure began to fray at the edges. Medical negligence. I was attempting advanced surgical procedures, knowing full well that the surgeries would be fatal, when Henderson interrupted. You recorded that understanding. Your personal journal reveals that you recognize the grim reality. Transplanting animal organs into humans would lead to fatal consequences. But you pressed on regardless. That's not medicine, doctor. That's a methodical slaughter masked as an experiment. Dr. Whitlock, lurking in the shadows, leaned in closer, his breath barely a whisper, as he offered his chilling assessment over Henderson's shoulder. Dr. Thornwell, I am officially advising the state medical board to revoke your license. You have crossed every line of ethical conduct in the realm of medical practice. Your actions have tarnished our field and have given fuel to those who denounce scientific medicine as cruel and primitive. The harm you've inflicted reaches deep, affecting more than just those you've targeted. Patterson confirmed the arrest. Silas Thornwell, you stand accused of the wanton destruction of property, the heinous act of criminal malpractice, and the appalling display of gross cruelty. You will remain in custody until your trial begins. The accusations laid bare their constraints. In the year 1847, in South Carolina, the act of killing enslaved individuals was not considered murder by the law. The accusations needed to focus on the damage to property and unethical behavior, rather than confronting the grim truth that Thornwell had taken lives repeatedly. This legal framework would stir up controversy and pave the way for future reforms. Yet, these transformations arrived far too late for the souls lost to Thornwell's grasp. The inquiry grew swiftly, enveloping everything in its path. Patterson commanded the digging at the burial site, revealing 29 bodies interred in shallow graves, each one bearing marks of surgical procedures. The state medical board gathered in haste for an urgent hearing, delving into Thornwell's actions and the chilling consequences they held for the realm of medical regulation. Newspaper accounts emerged in the Charleston papers, yet they approached the tale with an unexpected calmness. The pale establishment felt a deep unease at the thought of bringing to light a case that revealed the terrifying potential unleashed by the laws of slavery. Meanwhile, the surviving people at Belmont, 16 souls, who had endured months of terror, faced an uncertain future. Thornwell's arrest signaled the impending doom of the plantation, destined to be sold off to settle legal debts and pay those whom the court deemed deserving. In a grim reality, the survivors would probably find themselves sold to new masters, dispersed throughout the state. Their trauma lingered in the shadows, unrecognized and untreated, fading into obscurity except for fleeting mentions in court documents. A haunting question lingered in the shadows. What fate awaited Thornwell's journal? It stood as a chilling testament to medical atrocities, yet within its pages lay intricate surgical notes that certain doctors contended held significant scientific merit. A handful of medical board members insisted on keeping the journal intact, viewing it as a grim reminder of the missteps to avoid a haunting lesson for those who would tread the path of medicine in the future. Some wished for its complete annihilation, haunted by the thought that it might spark similar experiments or serve as a manual for unspeakable acts. The trial commenced on the 12th day of August in the year 1847, within the ominous walls of Charleston County Court. Thornwell found himself under the defense of a cunning lawyer named Simon Fletcher, whose strategy was as clever as it was morally abhorrent. He contended that although Thornwell's experiments had failed and might have been extreme, they did not amount to crimes according to the current legal framework. Enslaved individuals were treated as property. Medical experimentation had become an accepted practice, and sorrowful endings didn't signify a malicious purpose. The prosecution, under the guidance of District Attorney Robert Simmons, found themselves entangled in the suffocating web of slavery law, striving to secure a conviction against all odds. He fixated on the devastation of property, demonstrating that Thornwell had deliberately squandered precious resources through experiments he was fully aware would lead to failure. He highlighted the chilling, methodical approach to the murders, along with Thornwell's own records revealing his awareness that the processes were deadly. The pivotal moment arrived as a handful of survivors stepped forward to share their chilling accounts. Ruth, the woman who had spoken to Sheriff Patterson during the initial investigation, recounted the harrowing experience of witnessing her community being systematically dismantled. She recounted Thornwell's journal, detailing how he would watch people closely and jot down notes before choosing his next victim. Like a predator stalking its quarry, he would observe us toil, she recounted, scribbling notes in that ominous book. Then, a couple of days later, he sent Mr. Rayburn to fetch whoever he had been watching. That individual ventured into the medical building. We would hear sounds in the darkness of night. By the break of dawn, they would meet their end. Happened 29 times. We were powerless to halt it, was unable to escape. We couldn't escape. All we could do was wait and hope he wouldn't choose us next. Her testimony, spoken in a deliberate and controlled manner, as if she knew that showing too much feeling could be turned against her, was still profoundly impactful. The jury, made up solely of white property owners who typically backed slavery, seemed to squirm with unease. In the year of our Lord 1847, in the heart of South Carolina, the boundaries of morality were drawn. Yet Thornwell had dared to cross them. The defense sought to undermine the survivors' accounts, painting them as untrustworthy witnesses filled with resentment towards their owner, implying that their claims were nothing more than fabrications. The plan unraveled when the prosecution unveiled Thornwell's journal, a chilling testament that confirmed every harrowing detail recounted by the survivors. The journal marked the beginning of Thornwell's downfall. His relentless need to record every detail of his work left behind undeniable proof of a chilling pattern of murder. The trial lasted 6 days. On the 18th day of August in the year 1847, the jury delivered a verdict of guilt on every single charge. The judge, a man named William Rutledge, pronounced a sentence that echoed his deep anger at Thornwell's deeds, while also highlighting the constraints of the legal system of that time. Dr. Thornwell Rutledge stated, "You have committed acts that shock the conscience of this community. You have twisted the very essence of medical science into a tool for relentless destruction. You've shattered the faith that was entrusted to you by patients, and cast a shadow over your calling. Though the law restricts the charges I can bring forth, considering the legal standing of your victims, I still hold the power to enforce the harshest penalties permitted. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in the state penitentiary, a fine of $5,000, and permanent revocation of your medical license, 15 years for 29 murders." The words laid bare the harsh truth that the lives of those enslaved were regarded as having little to no worth in the eyes of the law. Thornwell would serve only 11 years before being released due to declining health in 1858. He passed away in 1862, having lived just long enough to witness the onset of the Civil War. Yet he did not survive to see its resolution or the abolition of slavery, which would have deeply undermined his legal defense. The Belmont plantation was sold at auction in the month of September in the year 1847. The 16 survivors were dispersed to various owners throughout South Carolina, as was the customary procedure when plantations were dismantled. There is no indication that anyone contemplated the idea of keeping them united or recognizing their suffering. They just melded into other labor forces, expected to carry on as if the last 6 months had never happened. Thornwell's journal ignited a firestorm of discussion. The state medical board ultimately chose to keep it sealed, claiming it held crucial evidence of medical ethics violations that future doctors ought to examine. The journal found its home in the archives of the Medical Society of South Carolina, shrouded in mystery and guarded by strict rules, allowing only licensed physicians to peer into its pages for the sake of education. This choice led to an unforeseen outcome. In the year 1852, a medical student by the name of Walter Harris dared to breach the access restrictions, making copies of numerous journal entries. Harris, driven by a deep moral conviction against slavery, shared these copies with abolitionist newspapers in the North. The excerpts were released alongside furious commentary regarding the terrifying realities that slavery allowed to unfold. Southern medical societies erupted in outrage at this publication, perceiving it as a Northern scheme aimed at undermining the South's cherished institutions. The Medical Society of South Carolina took swift action, commanding the destruction of Thornwell's journal to ensure that no more excerpts would see the light of day. On the 7th day of March in the year 1852, the journal met its fiery end, consumed by flames before the watchful eyes of the Society's board of directors, or so all thought. What truly transpired was that Dr. Edmund Whitlock, a key figure in the investigation of Thornwell, understood the crucial need to safeguard the evidence of this horrific event. In a clandestine act, he swapped the journal for a decoy volume just before the flames consumed it. He concealed the true journal within the shadows of his home, planning to relinquish it to a historical archive when the storm of emotions had finally settled with the passage of time. Whitlock passed away in 1869, and his heirs, unaware of the journal's importance, stored his papers and belongings in what was once his surgical practice. When the building transformed into apartments in the year 1875, Whitlock's storage found its new home in a hidden compartment behind a false wall. Nestled within what once served as a surgical theater, the journal lay concealed in that spot, lost to time for 16 long years. The Great Charleston Fire of 1891 consumed the building, yet the brick structural walls stood resilient against the flames. As the ruins were being cleared for rebuilding, the workers stumbled upon a hidden compartment containing papers that had been stored by the Whitlocks, including the Journal of Thornwell. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, stirring up forgotten fears and igniting long-standing arguments once more. In the year 1891, the world had undergone a profound transformation. Slavery was no more. The realm of medical ethics has undergone a transformation, with the Hippocratic Oath being embraced with greater gravity and the inception of the first codes of medical ethics marking a significant milestone. Thornwell's experiments were seen not as a matter of property law, but rather as a chilling act of murder cloaked in the guise of science. A legislative inquiry was called to investigate the events that transpired at Belmont and how such horrors were allowed to happen under the law. The report from the inquiry, released in the year 1893, featured detailed excerpts from Thornwell's journal along with accounts from 2 survivors who were found and interviewed. Ruth and a man named Thomas, now both in their 70s, reside in different states. Their accounts revealed chilling details about the horror that unfolded at Belmont. Ruth painted a chilling picture of dread, where individuals ceased to speak of their ailments, fearing it would mark them as prey. The way families huddled close, sensing the impending darkness of separation. Thomas recounted the chilling sight of Thornwell meticulously documenting in his journal, noting the way he clinically assessed the rise and fall of breaths or the steady beat of pulses, as if the act of selection was akin to being marked for death. The findings of the investigation were devastating, not only for Thornwell, but for the very system that had allowed his actions to unfold. The report revealed, the tragedy at Belmont signifies not just the moral collapse of one individual, but a deep-rooted failure of law, ethics, and the very essence of human decency. Dr. Thornell's dark deeds were made possible by a system that treated people as mere possessions, by professional groups that cared more about their image than taking responsibility, and by a culture that chased scientific progress while ignoring the toll it took on humanity. We cannot erase the pain that has been inflicted, but we can recognize that these 29 souls fell prey to both a singular beast and the terrifying systems that enabled it. The 16 survivors of Belmont scattered after the plantation's liquidation. In the years after the rediscovery, in 1891, research uncovered the fates of some of them. Ruth's life stretched until the year 1899, when she passed away in Greenville, South Carolina, at the age of 90. Thomas endured until 1902, residing in Georgia with his family. Many vanished from the pages of history, their destinies shrouded in mystery, much like the countless lives of those who were once enslaved, their stories seldom captured or remembered. The infant, having lost her mother and grandmother, little Dinah, endured a fragile beginning to life, and was nurtured by a woman from Belmont named Frances. She reached the age of adulthood, entered into marriage, bore her own children, and passed away in the year 1912. Her descendants, who were interviewed during the research for the follow-up to the inquiry in 1893, revealed that she never uttered a word about her early childhood. Whatever she may have recalled from those months, she chose to remain silent. Thornwell's surgical theater, the grim site where 29 souls met their tragic end, was consumed by flames on the orders of the state legislature in the year 1852, coinciding with the alleged destruction of the journal. The ground was torn apart, and the bricks lay strewn about like forgotten remnants of a once sturdy structure. Only a historical marker, erected in 1994, stands at the site today, now transformed into a county park. It is important to remember that this place was once home to a plantation, where sorrowful events unfolded in its shadow. The marker fails to offer any specifics. There was a haunting debate over how openly to confront the darkness of what transpired. The final wording reads, Belmont Plantation, 1846, 1847. Site of medical experiments that resulted in the deaths of 29 enslaved people. These souls perished, caught in the web of personal malice and the dark grip of societal wrongs. Their names, mostly lost to the shadows of time, yearn for remembrance. Augustus, Pearl, Dina, Samuel, Clara, Benjamin, and 23 others whose identities were lost to history. May their agony linger in our memories. The names emerged from the shadows of testimony and the remnants of records that endured. 23 others remain unnamed, their identities lost because Thornwell's journal referred to them only as numbered subjects, and no other records preserved their names. They perished without recognition and continue to be forgotten even in remembrance, a final insult added to the terrors they faced. The original journal of Thornwell, long forgotten, has been unearthed and now rests within the shadowy confines of the South Carolina Historical Society's archives. Under stringent protocols, researchers are granted access, and it has been widely referenced in scholarly discussions surrounding medical ethics, the dark legacy of slavery, and the unsettling history of human experimentation. Delving into the journal is an unsettling journey. The sterile words and meticulous records of anguish paint a chilling picture of a psyche that has utterly severed its ties to any sense of right and wrong. A number of medical historians have observed that Thornwell's experiments, terrifying in nature, paradoxically led to no progress in the field of medicine. Each attempt he made was fated to end in disaster, for the realm of transplant medicine demands a deep comprehension of immunology, blood typing, and the grim realities of tissue rejection. Knowledge that wouldn't be unearthed for another century. His victims perished in vain, without even the glimmer of knowledge that could aid others. The tale of Belmont stirs unsettling inquiries that reach far beyond Thornwell's personal transgressions. How many similar cases happened that went unnoticed? What depths of suffering were unleashed by legal systems that stripped enslaved individuals of their humanity? What duty do medical professionals hold to decline involvement in unfair systems, even when those systems are backed by law? These questions linger in the shadows, elusive and haunting, yet they hold a weight that cannot be ignored. The 29 individuals who lost their lives at Belmont deserve to be recognized as human beings, each possessing inherent dignity and worth. Instead, they became mere pawns in a twisted quest for medical progress, subjected to unspeakable horrors. Their deaths stand as a chilling reminder of the horrors that can unfold when the pursuit of knowledge forsakes ethical boundaries. And when legal systems fail to acknowledge the humanity of every individual, the survivors of Belmont bore their trauma in silence. With no true outlet to confront or share their harrowing experiences, they were haunted by nightmares, burdened by the sorrow of lost loved ones, and tormented by the lingering memories of endless days spent in the shadow of death's selection. The weight of their torment went unnoticed by the very systems meant to shield them, left untreated and dismissed as if their pain held no validity. The hidden scars that those who lived through the tragedy bore could hold as much weight as the lives lost in plain sight. There is no account of how Ruth managed the heart-wrenching loss of nearly 20 individuals from her community, including the haunting sight of some of them heading towards the medical building, fully aware they would not come back. We are left in the dark about how Thomas dealt with the haunting memories of those long months filled with dread. We remain unaware of the profound impact that the loss of her mother and grandmother had on baby Dina during those early weeks of her life. What we know is that they endured, that they pressed on, that they discovered ways to exist in a world that had sought to diminish them to mere possessions and test subjects. Their survival stands as a testament to the strength of humanity, yet that strength should never have been pushed to such terrifying limits. The ultimate fate of Thornwell's remains a chilling mystery. He was laid to rest in a nameless grave after his passing in 1862. His family seemed to shun him, refusing to recognize his existence in the eyes of others. There exists no tribute to his life, save for a chilling narrative, a stark reminder of how unchecked medical ambition leads to nothing but terror. The true tributes are dedicated to those he harmed. Augustus, who was promised relief for his cough, instead became the first victim in Thornwell's surgical theater. Pearl, anxious about her heart, unexpectedly found herself lying on an operating table. Dinina, the healer who sensed the impending doom, approached her fate with unwavering dignity. Samuel, Clara, Benjamin, and 23 others, whose names have faded into obscurity, yet their anguish lingers, etched in the annals of history. Their tale is one that should never be forgotten, not due to its uplifting or redemptive qualities. In this place, hope is a distant memory, and the truth lingers like a shadow. It occurred, and there was no escaping it. Because 47 surgical procedures and 29 deaths occurred because one man decided that medical advancement justified any atrocity. In a world where the foundations of society were laid upon the backs of the enslaved, the legal and social structures allowed for such unspeakable horrors to emerge. Sibler, how do you feel about this tale? Do you think the accounts from history truly reflect the events that unfolded at Belmont? Could there be even more sinister secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? This situation brings forth unsettling inquiries about the principles of medical ethics that continue to haunt us in the present day. How can we find harmony between the progress of science and the preservation of human rights? What protections are in place to stop similar wrongdoings in today's medical research? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this chilling chapter of American history intriguing, consider subscribing to this channel and tapping the notification bell so you won't miss any tales like this one. Pass this video along to someone who revels in the allure of hidden historical enigmas. Until we meet again, keep in mind that the most horrifying creatures throughout history were not of the supernatural kind. They were people who had managed to persuade themselves that their ambitions excused any actions they took.